Back on Morning Line talking gardening. Our guest with us this morning, David Bates with Bates Nursery over on Whites Creek Pike. Good morning to you, sir, and thank you for joining us along with Melissa McKay. And what do you think? Chicken poop, is that good for a garden? Because I'll tell you, my tomatoes like it.
Poultry litter is excellent. Now, here's one of the reasons why. Is that one of the things that is well known about poultry litter is that it is high in calcium. So what you're doing is that you're introducing a lot of calcium into it. Now, one of the things that can be problematic with poultry litter or chicken manure or whatever you want to call it, there's a lot of colorful names for it, by the way.
Sure.
Is that it tends to run on the alkaline, like maybe about 8.4 or 8.5. So the pH is a little high on it. You may have to add some kind of a sulfur, elemental sulfur to it to bring the pH down a little bit. So you talked about Epsom salts. That is magnesium sulfate. And so it has the sulfur in that compound. You could use something like that to help bring it down. And there are very inexpensive pH meters that you can get, or a little test you can use to help you determine where your pH is and if it indeed needs to be adjusted.
Gotcha. Let's take a call from Ann next. Ann, good morning. Hi, Ann.
Good morning. First, a comment for you, Mr. Barris. I've been meaning to let you know that your immunities change as you grow older, so always have that EpiPen handy if you're around your bees. But my comment for you, Mr. Bates, or my questions are two. I do a lot of container gardening because of arthritis, and I'm working with a 4- and 6-year-old grandchildren, and last year we did container potatoes. When is the optimal time for me to plant the sweet potatoes so that I get larger potatoes around Thanksgiving so I can let them dry or air, whatever you do, so I harvest them a month or 6 weeks before Thanksgiving? And my second question is, I also take care of my mother-in-law's yard, and her roses have that weird, I don't know, they're knockout roses, or they started out that way, but like the branches are all, they fall off, and they've got some kind of a fungus or something that I see on bushes all over the place. And we've treated them, and they are just sickly, and what can I do to help these rose bushes out?
Great. Thank you, Ann. All right, you got a couple there.
We'll cover the second one first.
Okay.
What your roses are being affected by is what's known as rose rosette. And rose rosette is a virus that is spread from rose to rose by mites. And I don't mean maybe. The spider mites are moved from rose to rose, and they carry this virus with them, and then that causes this mutant-looking growth that defoliates. It gets very spindly looking. There's really nothing you can do to cure that once it is infected a plant. If you caught it really early, you might be able to prune it out and delay it, but what you're likely going to wind up having to do is to completely dig the affected plants out and be rid of them. Now, I spoke a few minutes ago about using a dormant oil. This is an excellent application for the use of dormant oil, in that it will help control the spider mites and keep them from spreading from plant to plant. Particularly knockout roses, they're already starting to push out new growth. I mean, they almost don't even go dormant. But so if you haven't cut those back already, that's a good first step. Spray them with dormant oil, and if you've got plants that has the rose rosette on them, remove them. The good news is that if you have an empty spot, you can clean up all the dead leaves and things around it and safely replant into it, providing that you have treated that area of the other plants around it for spider mites. So keep that in mind for that. With regard to container growing sweet potatoes, you want to wait until after all danger of frost is past. You don't gain anything with warm season type of plants by planting them too early. The soil temperature is not high enough. We all, as humans, and I suspect other animals as well, we react to the air temperature because that's what we walk around and live in. But plants do react to that, but they also, to a far greater degree, are reactant to the soil temperature. And the soil temperature obviously does warm up, but it does so much more slowly than does the air temperature. So it's important just to be patient and wait a little bit. You probably need to wait at least a month before you get into those.
David, maybe Melissa has a suggestion here for someone who's messaged us on Facebook. What good annuals might she suggest to add color, but maybe the kind, and maybe she already touched on it with the coleus, that will not require much care? It's kind of one of those plant and go. I mean, I know some plants require more care than others. Any suggestions there?
Well, it helps to know what kind of light you're working with, sun or shade.
Yeah.
There's not really leave it and not mess with it kind of annuals. All flowers are going to need a little bit of care. They're going to need supplemental water during the late spring and summer when we're not getting consistent rainfall. If you really want to get lots of blooms, you should fertilize them every few weeks or so, or top dress them with some compost. But there are some flowers that are easier than others. For shade, begonias are one of the easiest plants you can go with. Give you a little bit of color. You get them in pink, white, red blooms. For the sun, of course, you have a whole lot of options. Lantana is one of the easiest hot season annuals you can use. And we're not getting those yet because they really like it hot. So another month or so, we'll have lots of that. You plant it, it gets enormous kind of on its own. Marigolds, also very tough. They do like a little bit more water. So you may find yourself adding some supplemental water there for marigolds, but they are pretty easy going, easy to take care of.
I had heard
and zinnias.
Yeah, I had heard with marigolds, I don't know, is this true at all with marigolds? Someone said once, if you want to plant those around the perimeter of your vegetable, they can keep certain pests out of the garden. Any truth to that?
It's kind of an old wives' tale.
Okay.
Some people,
They look nice.
Yeah, they
some
do.
people swear by it.
Yeah.
Some people swear by it.
Some people
others-
just swear.
Okay, I had to ask.
yeah,
I mean, you get these tips from folks and you don't know, you give it a try, but I agree with David, whether they work or not, they look nice, right?
You know what? Yeah, and I apologize, Melissa, for
Yeah.
talking over you. But one of the things that there's no such thing as Melissa mentioned as a maintenance-free kind of annuals. I remember a customer asking my dad one time that, what kind of a plant that can I put out there that I don't have to do anything to? What can I buy that I can put in my yard that I don't have to do anything to? And he said, well, put your money in stepping stones.
Well, what about a
because
cactus?
that's the only thing we've got that.
What about a cactus?
Well,
I have a cactus that just sits there.
Those are good things. There are perennials that are much more adept at it. The thing that everything will do well with, that will improve its ability to survive for longer periods of time between proper care, is to do the correct amount of soil preparation on the front end. If you plant your annuals or perennials or whatever you're planting into a hard compacted ground and the roots meet resistance immediately, they cannot become as well established as it will be if you give them good friable soil to get established into. And Nick, I know as a gardener you encounter that, and if you do a good job of soil preparation, you get much better results out of it than you would be if you just try to skip and plant the least amount of hole you can.
Yeah, you get back what you put into it. Listen, we have to take a break, David.
My grandmother used to say, if you want to buy a $2 plant, dig a $10 hole.
That's a good plan. We'll take a break and we'll come back with our final segment with our guests and more of your questions and comments right after this.